Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to start the new series and I would like to show you the new gambit, and today's topic is Falkbeer's contour gambit, one of the best continuation in order to face the king's gambit. So just a bit of history. After e4, e5, as we know, e5 is the most direct continuation for black to meet e2, e4 move. Black is immediately under the threat after f2 and f4. So white is playing the king's gambit, one of the most famous and one of the most popular opening like 200 years ago. So after f4, white is sacrificing the pawn in order to get the strong pressure in the center, and white is even ready to allow the piece sacrifice, like in the Musi attack. After g5, let's say bishop c4 and g4, white even here ready to play just simply short castling, and after g takes f3, queen takes f3, getting incredibly strong attack for just one piece. So I would say that King's Gambit was one of the most playable gambits in that years. Indeed, around the 18th century, and 19th century, so not always King's Gambit was so easy winning line for white, I would say. And just Austrian master Ernst Falkbeer played in this position after e4, e5 and f4, new move d5, and I would say this is quite interesting continuation. So instead of taking the sacrifice, black is sacrificing back the pawn. So by playing d5, Falkbeer, I would say, put a big question mark on all the players who used to play the King's Gambit very successfully. So this innovation is having quite serious positional base, not just tactical base. First of all, white cannot accept the pawn sacrifice after f takes e5, which would become just serious blunder. Why? Because after queen h4 check, white king has no square how to escape from the checks. After g3 and queen takes e4, black is just getting the rook on h1, when move like king e2 is losing immediately after queen takes e4, king f2 and bishop c5. White is then dreaming about the brave attack, just getting mated very soon, in the opening already. So easy to understand that move like king g3 cannot save white anymore. After queen takes e5, white's king has only one square, f3, serious one, and queen h5 already we can at least win a queen, and the game is of course over, so white could resign. So many games finished already in that position. After bishop c5 check, white had to resign, just no any solution anymore. So f takes e5 of course is a serious blunder. After d5, black is not only intending to counterattack white's center, but also ready to sacrifice material, aiming white's position of the king. So king becomes very unprotected, very unsafe in the center. Also black is by playing d5, completely opening the diagonals for his pieces. In addition to that, after e takes d5, black is having two opportunities. The one is just to play e4. I guess this was the best and the most important idea of the Falkbeer counter gambit. So in case playing for attack, white starts playing for defense, because what we can say about the f4 pawn, so instead when a situation when white is trying to reach the attack over the f file, so in that case after e4, f4 pawn only prevents white's bishop from being activated. So knight cannot reach f3 square anymore. So black is intending the pawn on d5 in the near future. Extremely difficult for white here to pretend on any advantage. Also, quite interesting line were played by Nimzowitsch and recommended by our Nimzowitsch just to play c6. So continue the gambit ideas. I would say that remind me a bit some kind of Danish gambit with a reverse color. So once again, black is ready to sacrifice everything. So sacrifice one more pawn, which quite similar, I would say, to the ideas which we studied on Scotch gambit or Danish gambit. So in that case, once again, white cannot capture on e5 because queen h4 check. And once again, white's king is a big problem. And accepting the sacrifice after d takes c6 is giving black quite serious initiative. Let's just look at a few examples. After knight takes c6, knight f3 and e4, instead looking for the attack, white has to watch out the black threats. Knight e5, bishop c5, intending already queen d4. So second knight is coming to f6. c3, knight f6. Attempt to break the center after d4 and to exchange e4 pawn only leads to the problems for white because black's mobilization much better. After e takes d3, knight takes c6, b takes c6, and bishop takes d3. Black just simply played short castling, and in this position, just very funny position, white just cannot save the game anymore. Black is intending rook e8 check, so king in the center, king cannot castle. So white also can moves his knight from b1 anymore because d3 bishop is hanging. Move like, let's say, queen c2 after rook e8 check leads to the very typical position when black is having decisive positional advantage. So bishop e2 could be met by bishop g4 and sends to the pin. White is under heavy material losses, and move like king, let's say king f1, I believe once again could be met by knight g4 or even queen e7, intending here to checkmate white's king. Not possible here to find any serious defense anymore. So other attempt, let's say if white is not playing a knight f3, trying to play something like bishop b5, not enough as well after bishop c5, knight f3 and bishop g4. Once again, black is bringing all his pieces to the game, and for white it's quite difficult to solve all the opening problems. King still in the center, c3, e4, queen a4. So white is trying to solve his positional problem with some tactics operation, but it's too late. E takes f3, bishop takes c6, king f8, d4. Last attempt to lock the diagonal, a7, g1, could be made by queen e7 check, and white's king is going to be mated after king f2, queen e2, and queen take g3, queen take g2, and the mate is coming. So you can see already how unusual this counter gambit, when white, instead going for the nice sacrifices which well known and been studying from games of Adolf Andersen and Paul Morphy, and instead white has to start thinking about how to defend his position, how to prevent blacks from continue developing his attack. So I would like to show you a few more examples. So what happened in case of e takes d5 when black is playing something like e4, which according to the theory is the main line. First of all, the old attempt to remove this e4 pawn, trying to get rid and only then to develop his knight to f3, could be made by rapid development by all black's pieces. Let's say after knight f6, d takes e4, and knight takes e4, white is already having quite serious problem. So black is not only intending bishop c5, preventing white's knight from short casting, but also how to stop queen h4 check. One game continuing here. Knight f3, bishop c5 and c4. White tried to keep the extra pawn, but this leads to the dramatic bishop f2 check, king f2, king e2, and queen e7. And funny enough, white's king cannot find the good squares on the chessboard. So black is also intending move like knight c3, winning at once the queen on d1. After king d3 or queen c2, black is just simply continue with bishop a5, completing his development. Queen a4 check, knight d7. Easy to understand from all lessons we already had that white piece is completely undeveloped and the game should be finished very, very soon. Queen a3, trying to exchange pieces, but too late. Bishop c5. b4, knight c3 check. White's king has only one move, king d2, and queen takes e3, queen e3 checkmate. So black's army easy complete his task because white pieces are still undeveloped. When all black pieces look bishops extremely strong, open files, white king in the center, all the factors gives black's decisive advantage. One more example, when white instead play knight f3 is moving his bishop to e3. Look at that. So you can ask what would happen in case of bishop e3. Bishop d6. Knight f3. Short castling. So important for black to bring his rook to the open file, to e file, where white's king is still placed. Knight bd2. Rook e8. Bishop d3. Looks like everything fine for white. After knight takes d2, he even could capture with the king to d2 and then maybe trying to keep the extra pawn. But here comes a big surprise. Knight f6, intending the bishop on e3. After queen e2, bishop takes f4, white is done. So white has to lose, or the bishop on e3, or queen on e2 is gone. So bishop on e3 is pinned. Doesn't change also move like king f2 after knight g4 check. Black is winning as well. Very, very fast. So we come to conclusion that despite the fact black is having pawn down in this position, white is a side which should play very, very accurate. And I would say even the first historical game between Adolf Anderssen and Ernst Falkbeer finished with quite easy win for Anderssen. Indeed, I would say that after the opening, the position of Falkbeer was even better probably. The gambit started to be very popular only later on, when Morphy and also Adolf Anderssen himself included into his opening repertoire. And already in 1857, Paul Morphy played one of his, I would say, most famous game, which played in the New York blind match. So, against John William Schulten. And I would like to show you this quite nice and short game. E4, E5. We go over the game between John William Schulten and Paul Morphy, which was played in New York 1857. I would like to remind you that Morphy played this match just blind chess. After f4, he answered with d5, sacrificing the pawn, and now we see Falkbeer counter gambit played by Paul Morphy, greatest chess player of the previous century. E takes d5, e4, knight c3, knight f6, d3. So once again, one of the main and direct threats is trying to get rid of black's pawn on e4 and to free the white's knight to obtain the f3 square, and all white pieces come into the game quite easily in that case. Indeed, black is keeping tension, gaining more development advantage after bishop b4. So now white, if white is just capturing knight takes e4 and trying to use the pin, so we easily could realize that black simply answering short castling and queen takes e4 will be made by rook e8. And unfortunately, white is going to lose his queen for nothing. Black is getting decisive material advantage. So, when d takes e4 is not so great, white choose to play bishop d2. So knight on c3 is not pinned anymore. And here, Morphy played one of, I would say, brilliant pawn sacrifice which we saw in the chess history. So black decided to move his pawn to e3, I would say sacrificing it just for one tempo. The main idea is that after bishop takes e3 and short castling, white has to stop black from playing rook e8 check, or rook e8 pinning the bishop on e3. And since that all white pieces, I would say, would become pinned after rook e8, so white has to spend extra tempo for moving away his bishop from e3. So this not allowing white to complete his kingside development and to get the king to the very safe place to the king side, let's say on g1. Bishop d2. Bishop takes c3. So in that position, Morphy is following his own rule, which says that when we have development advantage, important to remove already developed pieces by your opponent. In that case, your development advantage would become more significant. So because we have more pieces in the game than your opponent. B takes c3 and continue his strategic idea, rook e8 check. After bishop e2, black bring his bishop on g4, pinning white's bishop on e2 once more, not allowing white to play knight f3, because in that case, after bishop takes f3, so white cannot recapture with the bishop, since bishop on e2 is still pinned, and after g takes f3, knight takes d5. Black is having so great compensation for a pawn. White is having problem with f4 pawn, with c3 pawn. Black is intending to bring his queen to f6. So in that position, white's bishop are not so strong, and position is quite close, where knights, I would say, more a is knights better pieces even than bishops. So also black is intending queen h4 check. So Schulten decided to avoid this line and to step down from play knight f3 immediately. Indeed, this may be one of the key position when white had to look at some chance avoiding and escaping from the pin of the bishop on e2. Later analysis shows that if Schulten would have been playing here king f1 or king f2, that black's position is still quite strong, but nothing decisive has been found yet. And this king f1 move was still keeping quite good chances for white to escape from this, I would say, a bit dangerous position. Instead of playing king f1, Schulten decided to protect the pawn because he didn't feel any danger by playing this move. So he pushed c4, and according to analysis, this move one of the serious mistakes. Why? Because Morphy instead continue looking at how to use this pin of the bishop on e2, just decided to sacrifice one more pawn, but to get all his pieces in the game. This, I would say, a strategic point. Not many people understand, not many chess players understood so well, like Morphy did. So after c6, once again, white had to stick to the simple move like king f2 or king f1. Indeed, Schulten once again captured the pawn and played d takes c6. What is the problem with this move? After d takes c6, unfortunately, white's position is completely lost. You can ask how? How it's possible? It was just almost okay and just losing. Yeah. The main problem is that black is having now all his pieces into the game. So knight is looking towards the d4 square. So white also cannot play c3 anymore. So black's queen would come on queen takes d3, and black's advantage becomes decisive. In case knight f3, black is also completing his task after bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and knight d4. The game is over. Bishop on e2 is gone, and white's king is still there. So Schulten decided to try the last chance. So he played king f1, which allowed Morphy to perform easy combination. So already you can find it quite easy. Rook takes e2, knight takes e2, and once again using the pin, knight d4. So all black pieces in the game. So white is under strong pressure, has to sacrifice, has to give up, I would say, his knight on e2. But not only that is the problem. The problem is that white has to spend time for getting away the queen. So after queen b1, bishop takes e2, king f2, and knight g4 check. So I usually ask my student here to find the fourth mate, which I believe was quite simply found by Paul Morphy. So white has to play king g1, and here comes the brilliant finish. So what shall we do now? Knight f3 check, g takes f3, queen d4 check, king g2, queen f2 check, king h3, queen takes f3, king h4. So many comes to this position and ask me, okay, but where is mate? So we see checks, but let's say if black is playing something like knight f2, then after h3 it's still not so clear how to checkmate white, because queen h5 could be made by king g3 and white's king somehow escape from the mating threat. So where is the decisive move? I believe that just seconds Morphy spent in this position and found just simple knight h6. So now not only queen h5 or queen g4 black is intending, black is also intending knight f5 check and mate. And move like h3 doesn't help anymore, because after knight f5 check, so white's king should be moved on king g5 and game is over. White's king checkmated. Quite nice game, and everything played according to the principle we already studied for many lessons, how to play in the gambit openings. So this game was just like a first and important played by the new, I would say, new Falkbeer counter gambit. And this Falkbeer counter gambit becomes one of the best weapons for black of how to meet the king's gambit. And of course, as I said, also Morphy, also Anderson, also Zigbert Tarrasch included this sharp counter gambit system into the opening repertoire. And on our second lecture about the Falkbeer counter gambit, I would like to show you classical games played by these greatest players, also by Anderson and also by Tarrasch. Thanks everybody for watching, and follow me for the Falkbeer Gambit video lecture number 2 next week. See you. Bye.